So, Chris, here we are in Iamsville, and there are a couple of Quaker schools in the immediate environment that might be a little bit better known than Friends Meeting School. Sidwell and Sandy Spring come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see Friends Meeting School operating in that environment without attempting to be a mini Sidwell or something like that?
Thanks, Peirce. And I think before I answer that, I just want to say that I intentionally sought out Friends Meeting School, in part because it is a small school, and it is a school that's located in a somewhat remote and certainly rural setting. As someone who loves the outdoors and even more importantly, sees the outdoors as a critical platform for learning and stretching and getting cuts and scrapes and everything that's involved with becoming and developing into an adult or a young adult at that. So I'm really excited about the fact that it's not a Sidwell and not a Sandy Spring, and it is within that difference, that uniqueness, that small community, that I think the school has such tremendous opportunity. We can operate more as a family than we can as an expansive community. And I think that was demonstrated somewhat last night as we gathered several dozen members of our community to do a sort of a design thinking experience to plan for how we might return to school in the fall. So I'm excited for the opportunities that are presented by that.
Under the current circumstances, Chris, which are painful for everybody, the restrictions that COVID places on our lives and the expansive thinking that we need to do to really create a new community, what do you see as the assets that a small school has that can help us ask the right questions and seek solutions?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Linda. One of the messages that I tried to drive home last night is, and certainly one of the things that I learned along the way, was that even in a small community, and one that may seem a little more homogeneous than perhaps an urban school community might, we have a tremendous diversity of feelings and opinions about the coronavirus, thoughts about what makes for a good educational experience, thoughts about what is safety. All range of ideas were really interesting last night. So I think our opportunity though, and really it's more than an opportunity, it's a necessity, is for us to bring empathy and compassion with us into the fall, so that as I'm sitting across from someone who is feeling 100% ready to be in person and learning in that way, and I may be someone who doesn't feel ready for that we can understand where each is coming from, and that then we as a school community are finding ways to serve both of those needs with the child at the center. I think having come from a much larger school, I can tell you that the size of Friends Meeting School affords much more flexibility and capacity for that empathy than another school might.
So, Chris, if I were a young person thinking about going into education and interested in Quaker education as a teacher, why should I think about coming to teach at Friends Meeting School?
So first of all, if you were a young person who was interested in becoming a teacher at a Friends School, I'd be very excited to sit down with you and have a conversation. And why Friends Meeting School then? I think as I remember back to my early days as an educator, it was a good week if I didn't put my foot in my mouth more than 5 times. I think for young new teachers, it's critical to have a supportive environment. And, you know, my sense of the school is that we recognize that we're all in this together, whether I'm coming from the perspective of a student, a teacher, or a parent. But I also think within that is a teaching community that's vibrant and strong and supportive. And that's, frankly, my background is in faculty professional development and faculty community building. And so I'm excited to kind of bring all of those things together. And whether you're a new teacher or a veteran teacher, to embark on this challenge of next year, teaching in the middle of a pandemic, to do that and learn together about how to optimize our approach.
So Chris, we talked earlier about another kind of measurement, namely the use of queries.
Mm-hmm.
And we shared the anti-racism queries of Baltimore Yearly Meeting and discussed them briefly. I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how they might be applied within the context of Friends Meeting School and its operations and your own thinking over the next year. What do you see as some use of those queries as a different form of measurement than the SAT, obviously, but nevertheless, a framework at least for thinking that way?
Yeah. So it's a great question, Peirce, and it is certainly timely. We're at a time in the world where these questions related to inclusion and awareness and you know, recognizing our troubled past is more present and more relevant now than ever before. And so I'm grateful to have those queries as a tool. And in many ways, those play into something that I was pointing out earlier, in that I think, as I see them anyway, they help us with self-awareness as we think about our good intentions. What are the impact of those intentions on others? What are the impacts that we weren't anticipating and maybe weren't in tune with before this raised awareness? What might those be, and how can we work to mitigate those? I see that as really working hand in glove with the philosophy that I'm bringing with me into this role. And I'm excited. I mentioned that it's a diverse community. It could be more diverse. I'd love to have us be thinking about other identifiers within our community, and how can we make sure that we're welcoming in people who identify in so many different ways, and then make sure that their voice is included in that learning experience, learning as a community, learning as an individual. I think those queries could play a critical role for us in that.